Hi, this is Sergeant Betsy Brantner Smith at the National Police Association, and this is the National Police Association podcast. One of the things that the NPA is very passionate about is making sure that murdered police officers get justice. And yet, here we are in 2026. We're in a situation where very often killers of police officers are up for parole and are very frustratingly not receiving the full punishment that they should for murdering a heroic police officer just trying to do his or her job. So we have become involved in a case that we're going to talk about on this episode of a 28-year-old police officer who was murdered nearly 40 years ago in Los Angeles. And so to that end, I'm bringing in a fellow sergeant because, sergeants, we always know what's going on. But this is a good friend, a very good friend. We're going to talk about that, of a murdered police officer who now in retirement is the executive director of the LAPD Memorial Foundation. Glynn Martin, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I certainly appreciate you taking the time to talk about this particular case.
So before we talk about your friend and partner, Jim, I have to ask you, because everybody always wants to know, Glynn, why'd you become a cop?
It's the answer to that is not as direct as you think it might be. I started out very much wanting to be a sports writer. I was an athlete in college and worked for a local paper here in Glendale, California, as a sports writer. And then one day I took a look around the newsroom and realized that there were a whole bunch of very, very talented folks there that weren't making much money. So I took another look, this more inward. My father, as a retired captain from the Glendale Police Department, and I realized that he had provided a pretty good living for me, my brother, and our family, and thought that might be an option. And not long after taking that kind of internal survey, my best friend from childhood said, "Hey, I'm going to apply for LAPD." So I said, "All right, I'll go with you." And guess what? He became an LA City firefighter, and I joined the Los Angeles Police Department.
Now this is the early 80s, and in the, you and I are contemporaries, into the, 70s on into the early 80s. LAPD was the place anybody who wanted to be a cop wanted to go. LAPD was all over television and movies. And so here you are. I mean, that had to be just an amazing moment when you decided to join the LAPD and they chose you to join up with them.
Yeah, it truly was. And, frequently when discussing this kind of stuff, the question comes up, why didn't you join Glendale with your father? And the answer is, for me at least, was pretty obvious. I was born and raised in Glendale. I knew a lot of people in Glendale, as did my father, and I just didn't want my nose in the business of people that I grew up with, people that I resided near. And then there was the second part, was exactly as you stated. LAPD was all over, like you said, all over the entertainment industry. Adam 12, Dragnet, all kinds of great stuff. But more importantly, of equal importance, I should say, the LAPD Academy was about midway between my home and where I attended college at USC. So this, for me, was kind of a progression. Hey, I graduated from SC. I went straight into the LAPD Academy. More importantly here, being an Angelino, I cut my commute in half.
Because in LA, it's all about the traffic, right? Just like Chicago.
It was. Yeah, I lived in Glendale and commuted to USC, and it was even being in pretty fairly close proximity to the campus, it was still a heck of a drive, and the academy literally was halfway between home and USC. So that was kind of an ancillary benefit. And yeah, very proud to have served for the Los Angeles Police Department, and very glad they gave me that opportunity way back in 1982.
So, how many years did you spend on the job?
I spent 20 with LAPD.
Excellent, excellent. And during those 20 years, what was your favorite assignment?
Oh, you got to limit it to one, huh? As a 3-year officer, I worked a detail in Hollywood known as the Special Problems Unit. It was a group of 10 of us with a supervisor, and virtually all the work we did was in plain clothes and plain cars. And basically, we were assigned to investigate street felonies. That was a great assignment. That was an assignment where I worked with Jim Coyote. Several other officers that I worked in that unit with remain near and dear friends to this day. So as a youngster, that was a lot of fun. In terms of investigations, I was a major narcotics detective for 3 years. We did some record-setting cocaine seizures. That was fascinating work. And then my final assignment as an assistant watch commander, I had a shift of about 42 or 44 people, and that was enjoyable. And in between, I worked on all different corners of the city on several different specialized assignments, including Hollywood Vice, where again I worked with Jim Coyote.
So let's talk about Jim. You have his photo behind you in the shot. June 27th, 1987. Talk about that.
It was a Monday night. Jim had left Hollywood Vice 4 or 5 months before that. He was trying to fulfill his dream of becoming a member of SWAT, and at the time, the requirement was that he work Metropolitan Division. So Jim had left Hollywood Vice, where we'd worked together, and before that we worked Hollywood Patrol together, and before that we worked Hollywood Special Problems together. Jim had left for those 4 or 5 months. He left right after I got married, where he was one of my groomsmen, and we're talking about June 22nd. On June 21st, he was having a wedding planning meeting with him and his bride and his parents, and those of us that were supposed to be in the wedding. I had some other commitments, particularly Father's Day, so I wasn't able to make it. But I did talk to Jim on the phone. It was early morning, June 21st, at about a little after 11 on June 22nd. I get a call from one of the officers that we worked with in Hollywood, who inquires about my relationship with Jim, and said, "Hey, yeah, we were longtime partners, and we owned a house together." And then he informed me that he'd been shot and killed. Being in a new assignment, they didn't have the kind of connection with Jim that all of us in Hollywood. I think Jim had been there for 4 years. All of us in Hollywood had. So after making that notification, they directed me to call Metropolitan Division. I called Metro and spoke to somebody I knew who told me that the Metropolitan Division officer on the phone indicated that they needed somebody to make the death notification. And for me, it was pretty simple. His parents only knew 2 of us. I knew the second one was out of town. So I told Metro, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Got down there, had a discussion about how we were going to go about doing this. And my contribution was, hey, the first thing we need to do is try and locate his fiance. I didn't, other than the condo that Jim had just bought, I didn't have any other means of contacting her other than her place of employment, which by that time was it was probably midnight or so, and the place of employment was closed. Nonetheless, made an effort to try and make notification to his fiance. She's a tremendous woman who I've managed to stay in contact with over all these years. I was unable to make that personal notification, and that certainly was my goal, and that's certainly what should have happened. But it just the timing just didn't work out for us. So in terms of the timing, I knew that his father, who was up in Santa Barbara, California, his father left for work real early. I'm talking about 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and then we had a second challenge kind of thrust upon us. While we were out trying to make the notification to Jim's fiance, we were advised, I believe via police radio, probably on a TAC channel, we were advised that the news media was going to make his name public at 5 a.m. So this very much sped things up for us. Had to abandon the effort to try and make the notification to his fiance, and I was driven to the El Monte airport, where there was an LAPD helicopter waiting for me. So I was airlifted to Santa Barbara with Jim's new commanding officer at Metropolitan Division. We landed in Santa Barbara, and we were picked up by a Santa Barbara sheriff's deputy and taken to his parents' home. So it was a little after 4 in the morning when I knocked on the door, and my perception, my interpretation was that as soon as I knocked on the door, at least Jim's father knew. So even at 4 in the morning, and even though he's an early riser to get to work, I knocked on the door. He asked who it was. I said, "Hey, it's Glynn, Jim's old roommate," and he opened the door, and we made the notification nobody ever wants to make. So,
absolutely. Tell people how Jim was murdered. What was he doing, and who shot and killed him? Because we're going to talk a lot more about that.
Sure. At the time, there was a plainclothes element at Metropolitan Division, and Metro, at least as it was described at the time, was a mobile field task force. And what it was a tool that a station could use with these tenured and hand-selected officers to apply to a major crime problem. If you're having a street robbery problem, they'll send in a whole platoon. A very talented folks. They drive unmarked cars. To this day, they drive unmarked cars, and sometimes their work's in uniform, sometimes it's in plain clothes. Separate and apart from that, at the time, Metro had a surveillance detail, and we have some very, very talented surveillance details that are assigned to various functions. Like when I worked major narcotics, most of our work was surveillance. In this case, these were Metro work cases that might not rise to the level of the attention of these other major citywide surveillance details. And in this case, the surveillance team was involved with a serial burglar out in the San Fernando Valley. And so they're proceeding through the valley. The crook turns onto a cul-de-sac, and Jim follows the crook down the cul-de-sac, which is kind of standard practice on the surveillance. The rest of the units kind of disappear. Send one man on point, in this case, a moving point, to call out what's going on with the surveillance. As Jim was headed down the side street, some of the other officers on the surveillance team came on the radio and said that they had observed some pair of armed suspects. So Jim abandoned the surveillance of the burglar, spun his car around, and by the time he got back to the intersection where the other officers had encountered these suspects, both suspects had been stopped and engaged by the Metro officers. Jim, who was alone in the car, exited the car, identified himself, and wound up engaged with Louis Belvin Jr. They exchanged gunfire. Jim hit Belvin. Belvin hit Jim. Jim went down. Belvin ran off and hid. Both were ultimately transported to the same hospital where Jim was pronounced dead, and the medical staff there was able to successfully treat Louis Belvin Jr. So there was a second suspect, Thomas Mixon, who was shot by one of the other surveillance officers, and his wounds weren't life-threatening, and he too was treated at the same hospital. It's kind of simultaneous to the other two. So that's kind of how that went. As the background of these folks was revealed, Belvin was a known gang member who was selling rock cocaine out in the San Fernando Valley. He had traveled 20 some or 30 miles just to basically just to find a more wealthy audience, I guess you will, if you will, to purchase his cocaine. So known gang member, he had shot at least one person previously. Previous to Jim, and he was 3 weeks shy of his 18th birth. 3 weeks shy of his 18th birthday when he murdered Jim. So ultimately, the Metro officers took Belvin into custody as well. Took 4.5 years to get the case to trial, and kind of came out with a mixed verdict at trial. Having monitored the trial, been at the trial on behalf of the family every day, I think the jury, I'm pretty sure the judge had something to say about it. I think the jury missed some of the stuff and got confused about Jim's role being in plain clothes and whatnot. They did not return. They returned a guilty verdict, but it was for second-degree murder, and Belvin was sentenced to 27 years, 8 months in state prison. So I think they bought into some of the claim, and to this day, Belvin claims that he fired in self-defense. He thought Jim was somebody coming back. Belvin and Mixon had a dispute with a cocaine customer earlier. He too was hospitalized. He was beaten. He was beaten very badly. He was in serious condition at the hospital, and that's what they mounted as a defense, that they mistook Jim for this, Jim, who was a college fullback, mistook him for this guy that was 5'4", and that remains to be his claim, that he thought Jim was shooting him in retribution for the sale gone bad a few minutes or a few hours earlier. It's factually untrue. It's been proven that way. The court has found it that way, and still, even at the last hearing in 2023, he proffered that as his reason for shooting and killing the very talented LAPD officer.
And I mean, Jim he was 28 years old.
Yep.
You guys were all in your 20s, right? He's 28 years
Yes.
old. He's a very athletic guy.
Yes. Yep.
And he certainly didn't appear to be a cocaine dealer. I mean, this ridiculous defense that you can read all about when you research this case. It just doesn't hold water. So Belvin, who again he is always called a juvenile. He was not a child, like you said. He was a few weeks short of his 18th birthday. He was a known gang member. He was a known drug dealer, and so he went to prison, but he keeps coming up for parole. He came up for parole in 2005, 2010, 2017, 2022. And every time this case is pled for him that, he didn't really mean to murder a police officer, all that. It's all nonsense, right? In my opinion.
Yeah, in your opinion is absolutely spot on. And certainly when you've been around like you and I have, yeah, I understand they need to launch a defense. And just for clarity's sake, this is Belvin in the hearing launching the defense. The problem is you go back to these transcripts and over and over and over and over again, he has put forth this absolute fable here, and he continues to cling on to it. And you know, besides besides all the stuff that goes into the process, for me, it just feels like we're always picking that scab. The Peyote family is never going to heal because every couple of years we're picking that scab. And we're picking that scab because Belvin won't own up to it. In 2010, I thought there was some hope for that hearing. He refused to come out. He stipulated to 10 more years in prison. And then he applied to advance the hearing. So instead of the 10-year gap, we got a 7-year gap. And we were back in 2017. So, I understand that because, we've been in court, we've been in trials, we know people need to launch defenses, but we got to get off of this. And the other thing we got to get off is he's a shot caller for United Blood Nations. He claims and has claimed repeatedly that he has disavowed his association with the Blood Gang. But this is the third, and 3 times in 5 years, he's been caught with cell phones in his cell. And the one time that he spoke in defense of that, it was, well, he likes to watch movies and he wanted to watch movies on a cell phone. For me, the calculus just isn't there. So you've got somebody that's affiliated with United Blood Nation. They have a cell phone. He's a shot caller, and
Right. For clarification, a shot caller is basically an inside boss in prison in a
yeah,
street gang. And,
yeah.
he's not reformed. He's not going to come out, in my opinion, and be a productive member of society ever. And again, he shot and killed a 28-year-old police officer. And like you said, this continues to come up every few years, and it puts the family through untold emotional turmoil. It puts you as his close friend and former roommate. I mean, you guys weren't just coworkers. You were very, very good friends. And it's just, it's so unfair, and it's so extraordinarily inappropriate that the California Border Patrol would continue to do this. And again, I know everybody gets a defense, everybody gets their day again before the board, but this continues to cause so much turmoil and upheaval in the lives of not just the LAPD, but of real live human beings who lost their son, their brother, their fiance, their friend, their loved one.
Yeah, that's true. And as we all know, the scales of justice. This is a case, while quote justice is being served, this is out of balance here.
That's a great way to say it.
Yeah,
It is out of balance.
What's going on the inmate side is far more complicated, far more frequent than anything. If you look at this period of time, just the 2005 to 2026, the years that we've been involved with the parole hearings, I'd like to see the weight of what it is for the inmate, weight with an E. How is that weighted in these scales versus what's been done for the victims during that same period of time? Because having represented this family since the minute I knocked on the door, I'm not aware of much being done for the victims. I've seen all kinds of things being done for the inmate here. And that's where I think the scales of justice are just completely out of order in this manner and these kinds of procedures and processes. Because it leaves people that are doing what I'm doing, which are usually family members, it leaves them in a horrific spot.
Oh,
You've
you're
got
absolutely right.
you've got to go through all this because if you don't, they get released. And there's a bigger service to society keeping them in. So you try not to focus on the self here. Yeah, do I like going through this? No, I don't like reliving this every few years. But the fact of the matter is, if we're not doing it, and we're doing it very active, and I've got a lot of great partners here doing this. Our current chief of police, our past chiefs of police, Chief Beck, Chief Moore, um, Mike Albanese, the now retired chief of Burbank, who was at Metropolitan Division at the same time Jim was. These folks step up in a big way to help us out.
Well, and that's why the National Police Association decided to get involved, because we're sick of seeing this. We're sick of watching what's going on. And that's why we're encouraging people to get involved. And we put out a press release, and you can go to nationalpolice.org and find where you can send an email, where you can send a physical letter, and where you can keep up with what is going on with this case, because in October of 2026, this case, the case of Mr. Belvin being paroled, is going to come up once again before the California Board of Parole. You'll be there. And understand that for anybody listening and watching this from California, you think, I want to go to that hearing. I want to support the LAPD. It's very limited how many people can attend, who can attend. So sending that email and sending that letter and making your friends and family and neighbors aware of this um, are what people can do to help with this, right, Glenn?
And very, very well said. Yes, and we appreciate the efforts of everybody that steps up. Even just listening to this is a step in the right direction. And we appreciate and have appreciated over all these years. There's been a lot of very loyal followers and supporters of this initiative. And the fact of the matter is, and this is my opinion based on my current job here, taking care of the fallen, and all my years of law enforcement experience. I was born into a law enforcement family. If this person is released, he will kill again. I say that with all the knowledge I've amassed and with great conviction here. And I think that's a compelling reason for anybody, whether they're affiliated with the LAPD, they care about law enforcement, whatever it is. I think for me, that's the motivation right now. We got to keep this guy locked up for the benefit of you and me and everybody in between. So, yeah, thank you for all that, and thanks for what you guys do as an organization. I'm very proud of the work that we do, but we are LAPD specific, and I'm glad to see there's somebody out there to help out the rest of our law enforcement colleagues.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you said this. This isn't just an issue of fairness or justice. This is literally an issue of public safety. Glenn, where can people find you? Where can they find the LAPD Memorial Foundation and keep their eye on this initiative?
Yeah, we're at lapmf.org is our website. We have a pretty good presence on Instagram, which there's an interesting connection there. Our social media representative that takes care of that is retired from our department. His father was shot and killed in 1983. So the foundation, unfortunately, or both fortunately, unfortunately, we're here to support those families. Unfortunately, there's a lot of us involved here. So lapmf.org. Check us on Instagram. There's a private Facebook group that our social media rep can help get people admitted to. So, yeah, appreciate that. Certainly appreciate this and all the support. This is we're 21 years into this parole process with Belvin, and each one gets more and more difficult because as he ages, there tends to be a generation of sympathy. I think he should, for the remainder of his life, be treated unsympathetically and never be released.
Amen. Very well said. And Glenn, we can't thank you enough for spending time with us today. And if you'd like more information about the National Police Association, you can visit us at nationalpolice.org.
Every day, the brave men and women of law enforcement put their lives on the line to keep us safe. But they need our help to continue their mission. Activist politicians, progressive prosecutors, the ACLU, and the rest of the anti-police forces receive millions in donations from extremist pro-criminal elements like George Soros and woke corporations. The National Police Association is fighting them in courts around the country, including the United States Supreme Court, defending officers who are being attacked for doing their jobs. Additionally, the National Police Association works year-round to pass tough-on-crime legislation to put and keep criminals behind bars. Consider going to nationalpolice.org and donating to keep us in the fight. Together we can win. That is nationalpolice.org.